But at the end of the day, the weather is probably going to make this a moot point. It's CJ's first rain game. I mean, not his first ever, right? But in the pros, he has played nothing but great weather. I think Ohio State prepared him pretty well for this moment. So I'm not super concerned. Do you think there's any reason to be concerned with the weather when it comes to the Texans offense?
I think it'll be interesting to see exactly how they adjust to it because of what the Texans have been able to do down the field. I think they lead the league, or at least in the top 2 or 3 in plays over 20 yards. So these long developing plays, I don't know how well they'll fare with the conditions being not so suitable, a wet ball, maybe a little wind, stuff like that. It'll be interesting to see if they still try to dial up those plays or if they try to do something a little bit more around the line of scrimmage, maybe more gadgetry where you've got, wide receiver screens, something up the seam with the tight end, maybe a slot receiver thing. Those are things that I think if they don't feel they can push the ball down the field like they'd like to, maybe they go those routes.
Well, in this season, we've seen CJ Stroud kind of expand on his elusiveness. There was some discussion on how that was in college and how it developed, and he's really shown to be an incredibly elusive quarterback. The thing is that a lot of his moves are, on that slick surface could lead to more slips and falls and self-sacks in the backfield instead of, getting away and making the throw. So there's that. I agree with you. Long developing plays. We'll see how that fares in this weather, but my main concern with the offense is that they might become resigned to run it. And I know that the Jets aren't necessarily the best run defense. They're not bad at it. Their interior with Quinnen Williams is respectable. But do you think that it would be problematic if the Texans, just took the ball out of CJ's hands because of the rain and decided to commit to the run? Would we have like a Texans-Panthers game 2.0 if that's the case?
I hope not. I think Texans-Panthers 1.0 is all you need to know about where the Texans don't need to go. Obviously, they could choose to go that route. I mean, they've been trying to get this running game going and trying to find different ways, different avenues to try to have a successful run attack. It's just been more beneficial for them to put the ball in CJ's hands and let him cook. I think they can still do things with the running backs as far as screens and things of that nature that'll still allow them to stay around the line of scrimmage and be successful. I just don't know if lining it up and running at that defensive front is the recipe for the Texans, because their offensive line just doesn't block the run that well.
No, yeah, I agree with you on that. And combined with the rain, you just kind of be hoping. Once again, like the reason I referenced the Panthers game is basically hoping that the other team is as much affected by what's happening as you, and that they're just so bad at it that you become good at it. And that's just simply not what we saw. Or at least that it wasn't enough to make the Texans win that game. Speaking to the Jets, Zach Wilson has been named the starter this week. It's been a topic of Tim Boyle, Zach Wilson. Tim Boyle gets named starter, gets cut from the roster. Now it's Zach Wilson. Reports circulating that Zach Wilson doesn't even want to start, that he's given up on the organization, that he doesn't feel like he's getting a fair shake. Aaron Rodgers going on his friend Pat McAfee's show to defend him. Do you think that the Jets' problem lies in Zach Wilson's ability to play quarterback, or do you think that it is a cultural thing? Do you think that in the organization there's just a culture that promotes these leaks and this general culture of loserdom that is just they can't shake?
I don't know if it's a culture of loserdom, as you just said, but I definitely think it is a schematic issue where they're not using their weapons to their potential. I don't know what way you want to draw it up, but I mean, they've got a great wide receiver in Garrett Wilson. I mean, they've got Breece Hall as a running back. There's weapons, there's tools that the quarterback can use to be successful, and it doesn't matter who's back there. They're just struggling. So I think it's going to be interesting to see exactly what they do, if they do anything different at all. I wonder if they can block for him. I think that has a lot to do with their struggles too. They just can't buy their quarterback enough time. And I hope that continues for the Texans' sake this week.
I think that losing, as we know very well as Texans fans, creates problems in an organization. And I can tell you one thing: if the Texans got to where they are now, showed really strongly, made the playoffs, lost a game, and then came in next season and looked like the Jets do right now, I could see why the culture in that organization would be the way it is. Because once you've had a taste of it's one thing to lose for 3 years straight and then continue doing that, then it just becomes the norm. But when you've tasted winning, losing just makes everything worse. Like, so I could see it being an issue of, the Jets built up all last year, like, oh, Zach Wilson is the problem and the solution is another quarterback. And then they went out and, as I've said a couple of times before, decided that it was a good idea to put a 40-year-old quarterback behind a fragile, awful offensive line and hope that he just stayed healthy. And he was healthy for all of 40 seconds before he got carted off the field. Literally, I remember that game. I'm pretty sure he only lasted 3 downs before he literally got carted off the field. And so then now you're back to square one. If your second string quarterback, Zach Wilson, I can't imagine your third, now second string quarterback is serviceable to start in the NFL. And if you're considering starting that guy over Zach Wilson, you've already got problems that can't really be solved. And then from there is where Zach Wilson kind of starts the problem, but I don't think he is the problem right now. I think the problem, loserdom, the word that I made up just earlier, might not be the right word, but losing combined with, just not having the fix that was supposed to push you to the next level work, it's like a stark contrast to what the Lions did, where, last year they were really close and now they're a dominant team and you don't hear any problems in that organization. Dan Campbell's holding it down and that team is pushing to be one of the better teams in the NFC just as a whole, because they didn't have an injury to Jared Goff or something that like derailed them so bad that it kind of brought the culture down. But I think it's more so on the culture than Zach Wilson, though you can't deny Zach Wilson's role in that.